Hello again, everyone. I'm Lucas Berry, and you're watching Train Time on the New River Network. You know, we're just about ready to get started with fall sports season here on the New River Network. We'll be showcasing a lot of our local high school teams, but for areas a little bit to the east of us, there's another station that happens to be in the same company that we're in, the Greenbrier Valley Channel. And in the spirit of cooperation, the spirit of paying homage to what they're doing over in the Greenbrier Valley and what we've been so fortunate in the New River Network to be able to help them out with on occasion, I thought it would be fun to showcase something on the New River Network that was kind of filmed in their area, in their neck of the woods, just to show how much we appreciate them. And that's what we're going to be doing in this episode. Because all of the trains you see in this show are filmed from the White Sulphur Springs platform, right across the street from the legendary Greenbrier Resort. Now, for years, Chesapeake and Ohio had trains that would drop cars at the Greenbrier. I went into this in an earlier episode about passenger trains. You can watch down on our YouTube and all that other stuff. But for years, and the tracks are still there. They would park passenger cars there for people who would get to the Greenbrier, but didn't really want to march over to the resort in their pajamas, because the trains got there really late at night. And so that offered the chance for them to sleep and then get up and go to the resort the next morning. We won't be seeing any of that, but it's part of the history that makes White Sulphur so interesting to me. It also happens to be at the top of the grade. Coming into White Sulphur eastbound, it's a pretty big hill. And depending on how much power you got and how much train you're pulling, that hill may not go so well. I've heard stories that trains have stalled on that hill. I've heard a few times that that's happened. We don't see any of that in this one, but just shows you that it can be interesting. So without further ado, let's get going. Let's check out some trains at White Sulphur. It's train time at the Greenbrier. It's August 2023, and I'm on my way to Shepherdstown, West Virginia, and as you probably expect, I followed a route that kept me near the railroad as much as possible. I had a feeling Amtrak was in the picture by the time I hit White Sulphur Springs, so I pulled off and hit the depot, and turns out I was right. I got there just in time to watch it leave for Clifton Forge, Virginia. I'm really glad I stopped here because White Sulphur was a hot spot today. Right after Amtrak passed, the dispatcher cut loose an empty coal train on the way to Hinton and beyond. The Yankees met eastbound manifest L211, which will end its day in Clifton Forge after presumably stopping to work Covington, Virginia. For a time, New River Network was privileged to work with our partner, the Greenbrier Valley Channel, to broadcast the Battle for the Springhouse basketball tournament at the Greenbrier. This gave me another reason to be in town, and thus I got to see if anything was running before I headed over to the tournament. One day there was. Here's Amtrak 50 coming in on a February day in 2024. Now, I can't go home without checking the signal to see if there was anything coming. One night I got extra lucky with an eastbound and a westbound. The eastbound showed up first. It's a grain train likely going to North Carolina. Right after that loaded train passed, an empty grain train showed up. I never did get any of the train numbers, so I can't tell you where it came from and where it's going, but I can tell you this crew was in a hurry to get to Hinton, and standing this close to a speeding train makes for a very cold experience. The next day, I was back at it for another day of basketball, but not before picking up an eastbound coal train on the way in, and after a very short wait, it showed up. I was happy to see the train moving at a good pace through here. Like I said in the beginning, sometimes trains have been known to stall on this hill, and those engines on the head are working very hard to make sure this one doesn't. Now, this episode would be incomplete if we didn't mention that the Chesapeake in Ohio is who we had to thank for the present resort, which opened up in 1913, although it was not the first resort on the property here. It was also Casino that brought golf to the resort, with the first golf course here opening up in 1910, and you can still play it. They call it the Old White today. If I were any kind of golfer, I'd love to play it, just for the railroad connection. C&O was also responsible for the interior design as well, hiring famed interior designer Dorothy Draper after World War II, and in 1948 they opened the place back up to visitors following a restoration. The resort had been bought by the government for use as a hospital during the war and then sold back to the C&O, who kept it well into the CSX era, when the resort was sold to now United States Senator from West Virginia, Jim Justice. Thank you so much for watching. If you like the program and would like to watch past episodes, I invite you to check out our Facebook page. You can do so by looking up New River Network on Facebook. You can also check us out on YouTube and New River Network. Watch our Roku channel again, search up New River Network. You can check us out on cable in Fayette County as well, Channel 4 on the Plateau, Channel 17 down in the Valley. So, for the New River Network, I'm Lucas Derry. Man, you give it any time. It's train time.